So we're having a look at food toys and puzzles today. Now, a lot of our normal natural dog behaviours such as chewing, biting, digging, destruction, they're all exacerbated when our dogs don't have appropriate outlets for those activities. So boredom and lack of mental stimulation is going to be contributing to those behaviours. There's obviously other reasons that also contribute to those behaviours. So it's important that we're addressing those behaviours from all angles. Now, one of the easy ways is looking at how we feed our dog. So we can put our dog's food in their food bowl and it's gone in 2 seconds and our dog's learnt nothing. They've been given no mental stimulation. The food's just there and it's gone. Whereas if we're actually changing the way we feed our dog, we can feed our dog through either hand feeding our dog for rewards for training, or we can put our dog's food in various puzzle toys, treat balls, things like that. Now, the focus obviously of this lesson is looking at our food toy and puzzle options. So there's hundreds of different food toys out there on the market these days, especially as we continue to see how beneficial it is for our dog's behaviour. Now, first of all, having a look at the range of toys that are really only suitable for your dry food or your dry treats. Now, I think a lot of people, they see, a treat ball and they think, yep, we'll put some treats in it. Remember, it doesn't have to be treats. If you're feeding your dog dry kibble, we can actually put their dry kibble meal into that treat ball there. So this is one of our favourites, which is the Aussie Dog Tucker Ball. This is the medium size. They come smaller and larger, and especially if you have a destructive dog that decides to chew up all the balls that you give them, but they really love balls and ball play and rolling the ball around, then this is a really good option. When you are choosing the right size, make sure that the ball is big enough that your dog can't clamp their jaws over it, because that's when they're going to destroy the ball. So if I had a German Shepherd, for example, I'd probably be going for the larger one here. Now, these are a little bit tedious to fill because you do only have the one hole there to put your dry food into. So you might not be looking at putting your dog's full 2 cups of dry food in that, but maybe half a cup, quarter of a cup you might put in there, and that's going to provide a really enjoyable game for that dog. Now, as you can hear, there also has a marble in there. So even when this ball is empty of food, the sound of that marble rolling around can be really exciting for a lot of dogs, and they enjoy still rolling it around even when it's empty. So that's certainly worth a look at. Probably our most popular one that we see a lot of our clients' dogs using, and I use this all the time with my dogs, is the Kong Wobbler. So this is a hard plastic, so don't confuse it with your normal rubber Kong that a lot of people have. This is different, so it's weighted at the bottom. So with the Kong Wobbler, we simply unscrew it, put your dog's whole meal in there, put it back together, and the dog just has to bash the toy around as it wobbles to get all their dry food out. So that's a really good popular one. Also very strong for dogs that are quite destructive and like to destroy toys. Another one from Kong, similar, is the Kong Gyro, where we simply just unscrew it, put your dog's dry food in there and screw the lid on and give it to the dog. The ball rolls around on the inside there. Probably not as strong, so if you've got a dog that really likes to destroy toys and plastic, then you'd be better off going with your Wobbler or your Aussie Dog Tucker Ball. The really strong chewy dogs may start to chew that donut there and damage the toy, but certainly good for a lot of dogs there. One of the most popular toys that I find a lot of people have and are familiar with are the Kongs, your original rubber Kongs. So with these sorts of toys, and this is a similar one, a really good one for heavy chewers there, where they're hollow up the middle. Now, if I was to pack that solidly with my meat products or freeze that, it's actually going to be really hard for my dog to empty, because they're literally only going to be able to get their tongue maybe about halfway or a third of the way in there to empty the toy. So these sorts of toys are toys that I fill by layering. So I might put some dry kibble or dry treats in the top half or 2/3, just depending on the size of your dog and the size of your toy. I might then drizzle a little bit of honey or peanut paste, or you can buy like your Kong paste that are nice and safe for the dog as well. And that'll just make those dry treats or the dry food stick in there a little bit. And then I'll pack the top half or top third tightly with my meats there, and that will plug the dry food in. So by the time the dog has worked through the moist food there and got that plug out, then where they can't reach any further, that's when they've actually got the dry food there. So it'll be loose and it'll wriggle down a little bit there, and the dog then can slowly work their way getting that dry food out. But if the meat is packed tightly to the end, they're actually not physically going to be able to reach it and get it out. And that's why you'll find them lying in your yard half full still. Now, the type of toys that I really like, especially for young puppies or any dog that has a problem with a lot of chewing and distraction, puppies that are still really bitey and nippy, is I really like the rubber toys that you put your moist foods, your minces, your pureed vegetables, your tinned food, raw diet, those sorts of things into. So different from these ones with our dry kibble, you'll notice when you see the dog play with these, it's very much of a play behaviour. It's a physical activity where they're having to bash the ball around and roll it around with their nose and follow the kibble as it comes out. Whereas these toys, the dog has to actually sit in one spot and focus on licking and chewing and licking and chewing and licking and chewing to get that food out. Now, if we pack these well and we find something that our dog really, really likes and really wants to work for in regards to the food that we're putting in there, then we can certainly get half an hour or even up to an hour of chewing and mouthing and licking time out of these activities. So you can imagine if your puppy has just spent 45 minutes chewing on this to get their food out, then that's that much less chewing and mouthing and biting that your puppy's going to be looking for in inappropriate ways, like on your furniture, your shoes, your fingers, and so on. So with these, obviously your dry food's just going to fall straight out if we put dry food in them. So you can see this is one of the Conquest range. I really like these toys. I find they take a lot of puppies at quite a long time to remove all the food. And you can see there, so this is the large version, which is empty. This is the small one, which I've filled. So I've just got my lamb chunkers or my chicken chunker meatballs from the supermarket, or the other thing that I might use is my Prime 100 dog roll that you can get from your pet shops. Why we really recommend the Prime 100 is that it's a good quality dog roll. It doesn't have all the rubbish and fillers like a lot of your supermarket ones do. So also makes a really good healthy treat if you're needing a higher value treat in your puppy training or your dog training. But you can see there how I filled this. I've just gotten the little lamb chunker balls or the chicken chunkers, and I just keep mushing them into the toy until I can't fit any more in. I can shake that, nothing falls out, and I can give that to my puppy. Now, if you've got a puppy that doesn't have a lot of work ethic, and you're giving them these sorts of things for the first time, you might find that they might try to get the food out for a few minutes and then they decide, nah, that's too hard, and you find it in the backyard full and your puppy leaves it and doesn't empty it. What happens with those puppies is they try to have a go at getting the food for a little bit, and because they can't get it out quickly, they give up. So if that's your puppy or your dog, then what I would suggest is instead of packing the food so tightly in there, just space them out a little bit, make them easier for the dog to succeed in getting the food out. Once they start getting the food out and succeeding and seeing that it's possible to empty the toy, then you can start to pack it tighter and tighter there. Now, if you're giving it to your dog packed tightly and it might be taking, an hour or 45 minutes initially, now they're getting through it a bit quicker and it might be down to half an hour, and you want to make it last longer, then once it's packed, you can actually put it in the freezer and freeze it. So that will add to the difficulty level there for your dog and start making it last longer, especially if you've got a puppy that's teething and their gums and mouth are a little bit sore. They can quite like the feeling of the cold, the frozen meat, which is going to be more soothing for them there as well. So you can see here on the plate, hopefully, we've got our balls with our dog roll. I just chop it up into little cubes before I then mush it into the toys. And we've also got raw meat, raw diet we can utilise in these toys as well. Obviously, the more firm the food, like in your dog rolls and in your little meatballs, that's obviously going to be more difficult for the dog to remove. Your raw sort of minces and diets there, they're going to be softer, so they will be able to be removed from the toys a lot more easily. And so those sorts of diets, you probably find that you'll need to fill the toy and freeze it to make it harder there. So as I said, this is the Conquest range, the 3 different ones there. This one I would probably suggest not using with your puppy until they get their adult teeth, because I find that their little sharp canine teeth tends to start breaking this thinner edge there. But on the adult dog, that will last a lot longer. The Quest range is a softer rubber though, so if you do have a really destructive dog, you'll probably find that your dog will rip these apart. So these are better for your mild to moderate chewers there. If you've got the dog that's quite destructive, then we really love and recommend the Westport range of toys. So this is the Westport topple. This is one of our favourites there, and we'll give you a closer look here. So it comes in a large and a small, depending on the size of your dog. So if you've got a really small dog and you give them a really big toy, that it's going to be easier for their mouth to access the food. Whereas giving the smaller dog the smaller toy, the access points are going to be smaller. So the smaller toy will usually take the smaller dog longer to empty than giving a small dog a larger toy there. So you can see the small one I have filled there. Again, I've just stuffed those chicken balls in there. There's lots of other things you can use as well. You can use yogurt, pureed vegetables, mushed up rice, pasta, things like that. As long as it's safe for the dog to eat, then by all means, you can use it in there. The Westport Tux is another good strong one. So it doesn't have as much space in there to fill the food. But with that space, if you were to put dry food in, again, that's going to fall straight out. So make sure you're using these sorts of meaty things to fill that space. Again, in the freezer, we'll make that last longer. But if you've got dogs that like gnawing on things, they'll usually empty the food, and while they're doing that, be gnawing on these ends as well there. And so they're really nice and strong. I've had them with some really destructive dogs on these actual toys here that you see, and they're in perfect condition still with those strong chewers. Another great option for providing that mouthing and licking action, especially if you've got an anxious dog, they often like to do a lot of licking and chewing because it helps release hormones that make them feel good. So you'll find a lot of anxious dogs may be quite destructive dogs. So again, another good reason to be feeding, using these toys on a daily basis to give them that appropriate outlet. So there's a whole range of Licky mats, and there's other generic brands as well. So things like this. There's the Licky bowls that we can fill there as well. So this sort of thing is where you might get your meat or your mince, and we just mush it into the mat like so. We can also use our dog roll and push that in. You can put in there cream cheese, cottage cheese. You can smear it with yogurt and freeze it, mushed veggies, anything like that. Whatever's going to make it the hardest for your dog to get out and they spend more time licking and utilising it. But yeah, we can certainly pop that then in the freezer if we need to make that harder. And you would obviously fill the whole mat or the whole bowl with the food there. So that's a really great option. I really like these as well. So you can see that they have suction cups on the back, and we can smear our moist food or peanut butter, almond butter, things like that. Just being cautious. If you are using like your peanut butters or your nut butters in any of these toys as a paste, then make sure that they don't contain any artificial sweeteners because they are toxic to your dog. So you're just looking for the products that are just basically your crushed nuts and oil without any sort of additives there. But with these suction caps, we can suction them onto the wall, onto the edge of the bathtub, onto our window, and at the dog's height. So as they're licking on the toy, we can then groom our dog, brush our dog, bath our dog, especially if you have a dog that's a bit wriggly in the bathtub, or they want to keep whipping around and biting the handle of the brush when you're trying to brush the dog. This is a really good way to get our dogs facing forward and nice and still so that we can groom them effectively there. Another way that we can distribute our dog's dry food are in our Snuffle sort of toys. So there's a bunch of different Snuffle mats on the market. They lie on the floor and you just sprinkle your dog's dry food over them and just sort of give it a bit of a rustle up so that the dry food really gets down deep into the bottom of the Snuffle mat, and your dog has to utilize their natural scenting and hunting and sniffing instincts to get all the food out of that mat. So another dry food option there. Another really good dry food option is scatter feeding, particularly if you've only got one dog. So I wouldn't want to be scatter feeding my dog's dry food all over the backyard if I've got multiple dogs out there, because you won't know who's eaten what. So certainly it's a one dog at a time. If you can separate your dogs, if you've got a multi-dog household, then certainly you could scatter feed. But otherwise, if you've just got the one dog, get their dry food dinner or breakfast, and we just spread it all over the backyard or the back deck. And again, the dog has to utilize the hunting, scenting instincts. A lot of dogs really enjoy sniffing and searching out for their food. The other good thing is that they're not going to know when they've got the last piece of food. So even once they've got the last piece of food, they'll still be out there sniffing and searching to make sure that they have gotten all of their food. There's also a big range of dog puzzles. So things like this, where your dog might have to move items to get their food, twist and turn things. And in a lot of these sorts of puzzles, you can utilize your moist foods, your meats, or your dry food. So I could pack each one of these sections with my raw diet or my dog roll, meat, that sort of thing. This doesn't have to be just for your dry foods or your dry treats there. So either or in a lot of your puzzle toys there. And then the other range of things which a lot of people have probably already seen and utilising are your slow feeder bowls. So there's heaps of them on the market. Great for putting your dog's dry food in, especially if you've got a gutsy eater and they inhale their food in 2 seconds. Then they're a great way for slowing down their eating. Now, let's get creative. You don't have to just use dry food in these. You can certainly put your raw diets, your moist foods, your meats, your veggies, things like that in your slow feeder bowls as well. If you've got room in the freezer, you can even freeze them, and that will make them even slower there. This is one of my favourite ones, the Northmate green feeder, with all the different heights there simulating the grass. It makes quite hard work for the dog to have to get in, and they really have to try and get the tip of their tongue to get in and get the food that's in the middle of that bowl. So that's a good one as well. And then we have a range of toys that you could put your moist foods in or your dry foods in. So any of these rubber toys with the cross gaps there, You can put your dry food in there, or you could put your chopped up dog roll, chicken balls, things like that. And this is actually a way that we can get the mouthy chewing action with our dry food there. So with our dry food in these, they're going to have to do a lot of chewing and licking to get their dry food out of this, as opposed to these toys that are the physical activity there. So they're another good one. I find these are usually quite hard for a lot of dogs to use. So they're usually best for the dogs with really crazy fruit drive that are really going to commit and work hard at getting the food out of these sorts of things there. So there's just so many benefits to utilising food, toys and puzzles for our dog's behaviour. As mentioned, we're providing appropriate outlet for the biting and the chewing and those destructive activities. If we've got dogs that are maybe find it quite difficult to settle and they're constantly hypervigilant and on alert, and they find it really difficult just to lie down and do nothing and relax for periods of time, then these rubber sort of toys again are a really good way of helping those dogs to relax and settle and focus. It's a lot of mental stimulation, so that provision of the additional mental stimulation will also help reduce your unwanted boredom sort of behaviours, like your digging and your chewing and barking behaviours. It's also an activity that's getting our dogs to focus and concentrate on one thing at a time. So if my dog has just spent an hour emptying this toy, then that's an hour of focus and concentration that they've put into one activity. And that can be really hard for a lot of dogs to achieve. So there's a lot of training, a lot of behavioural modification that can happen simply by feeding our dogs this way. The only time it takes for you is the time it takes for you to fill the toy, and the rest of the training is happening while you can go off and have a coffee, do some work, watch TV.